Imagine starting a war with one single strike, a knockout punch designed to topple a regime in just a few days. Now, imagine that plan backfiring so badly it throws the entire world into chaos. Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore, the story of the 2026 US-Iran war, a conflict that was born from one giant miscalculation.
So it all kicked off with what the military calls a decapitation strike. And yeah, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's an attack designed to take out a country's leader. On a Saturday morning, a joint U.S.-Israeli airstrike did exactly that, hitting the office of Ali Khamenei, who'd been Iran's top leader for 37 years. The whole theory was pretty simple. You cut the head off the snake, and the body dies.
And almost immediately after the strike, President Trump went public with the American rationale. Now, you got to understand how this was framed. This wasn't an invasion. No. It was a liberation. The message to the Iranian people was, we're giving you a once-in-a-generation shot to overthrow this terrible regime yourselves. Okay, so the American strategy was, on paper, pretty straightforward. It was a two-step plan. Step one, just total shock and awe, a massive air campaign to completely cripple Iran's military. Step two, well, the idea was that with the regime on the ropes, the people of Iran would rise up and finish the job.
And man, did they go all in on step one. Just think about this. On the very first day alone, U.S. and Israeli forces hammered more than 900 targets all across Iran. We're talking everything from nuclear sites to command centers. It was just a massive, all-out assault meant to break the regime's will right from the start. But, and this is the big but, that popular uprising, it just never happened. By day 11, it was painfully clear that the main goal, regime change, had completely failed. The U.S. was stuck. So that leaves us with the million-dollar question, right? Why did this seemingly airtight strategy just fall apart? To really get why it all went wrong, we've got to go back a bit. You see, this war didn't just pop up out of nowhere with a missile strike. It really started with the complete death of diplomacy. So let's trace the steps and see how years of tension basically set the stage for this whole disaster.
Yeah, if you look at this timeline, you can see it's really just a story of things falling apart one step at a time. After the U.S. left the nuclear deal in 2018, things just got worse and worse. There was a short war in 2025 that made everyone trust each other even less, and by early 2026, when those last-ditch talks in Geneva went belly up, well, honestly, war felt almost certain.
And here's the absolute core of the problem, why diplomacy was doomed. The two sides were just talking past each other. The U.S. was demanding Iran give up its nuclear program, its missiles, and its influence in the region. But for Iran, those weren't just bargaining chips. They were the three pillars of their national security. They were completely non-negotiable. There was simply no middle ground to be found. But, it wasn't just failed diplomacy. The bigger issue was a massive misunderstanding of how the Iranian state actually works. To figure out why Iran didn't just crumble after that first big punch, we need to pop the hood and see how this regime is actually built. Okay, this right here is super important for understanding Iran's resilience. It's like they have two governments running at the same time. On one side, you've got the stuff we all recognize, a president, a parliament. But then there's this other layer of power, this shadow government almost, run by the supreme leader. And those are the guys who really call the shots, vetoing laws and picking the next leader. They hold all the real power. And this whole two-track system, it applies to their military too. You got the regular army, sure, but then you have the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. And their whole reason for being isn't just protecting the country, it's protecting the revolution and the regime itself. Their loyalty isn't to the government, it's to one person and one person only, the supreme leader. And get this, the IRGC isn't just a military force. Far from it. They're basically a giant corporation. They run huge parts of the Iranian economy, construction, shipping, trade networks that bust through sanctions. Through these foundations, they control over 20% of the whole economy. This is how they keep the lights on and the money flowing, no matter what the rest of the world does. So the question is, how does a country like this even think about fighting the U.S. military? Well, they know they can't go toe-to-toe, plane for plane, so they don't. They fight a different kind of war, a smarter war. It's called asymmetric warfare. And this is a perfect example of what that looks like in practice. Iran just unleashes these swarms of really cheap but pretty effective kamikaze drones. And look at the math here. A $50,000 drone forces the enemy to fire a $2 million missile just to shoot it down. They're basically making their enemies go broke just trying to defend themselves. It's brilliant in a terrifying way. But Iran's plan went way beyond just bleeding its enemies on the battlefield. Their strategy was to make this a global problem. The goal was simple. If Iran is going to feel pain, the whole world is going to feel it with them. And they did not waste any time. In the first week alone, they and their allies hit back hard. Just look at this map of all the places they attacked. They launched strikes against U.S. bases and allies all over the region, from the Mediterranean down to the Gulf. They basically lit up the entire Middle East. And of course, the human tolls started climbing fast. The U.S. and its allies took casualties for sure, but those numbers were just dwarfed by the losses on the other side. That initial air campaign was absolutely devastating inside Iran and for its allies, with well over 1,000 killed. But Iran's most powerful weapon might not have been a missile at all. It was economic warfare. By threatening shipping, they essentially shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which is like the main highway for a third of the world's oil. Traffic just stopped, plummeting by over 90%, and the global economy felt it instantly. The panic was so real that the International Energy Agency had to do something pretty drastic. They called for a massive release of 400 million barrels of oil from emergency reserves. Now, to put that in perspective, they didn't even do that during the height of the Russia-Ukraine war. That's how close the world was to a complete economic meltdown.
So let's just recap where we are just a few weeks in. The main goal of regime change? Total failure. The global economy? On the brink of collapse. And the United States? It's stuck in a messy, unwinnable war with no good way out. So, where do they go from here?
Well, what happened next was a quiet but huge shift in strategy. Suddenly, all that talk of regime change just vanished from official statements. The new mission, as you can see, was much smaller, much more limited. Just damage Iran's military and nuclear sites. It was a silent admission that the whole grand plan
This is the
had
most
gone terribly,
unbelievable,
terribly
tragic
wrong.
twist in the whole story. That big decapitation strike at the beginning, it worked, in a way. It killed the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, but his son, Mojtaba, took over. And not only was he known as a hardliner, but his entire family, his wife, his mother, his child, they all died alongside his father in that same attack. So the U.S. didn't just get a new enemy leader. They got one with a deeply personal, tragic reason to seek revenge. Now, the official justification from the United States was that this was a preemptive war. The argument was, look, we had to strike now to prevent a much bigger, much more dangerous threat down the road, which was, of course, a nuclear-armed Iran. But that justification just leaves us with this final, haunting question. In trying to surgically remove one threat, did the U.S. accidentally create something far worse? Did they forge a new enemy, not just a political one, but one hardened by tragedy and driven by a personal quest for revenge? That might just be the true, unanswered cost of this war, a more dangerous, more determined enemy for generations to come.